Welcome to FUNC YOU UP, the podcast that gives you the best of functional medicine, nutrition, and wellness in 8 minutes or less.
Hello, welcome to the at-home edition of FUNC YOU UP. This is Michelle Miller, clinical nutritionist.
And I'm Diana Orchant, functional medicine registered dietitian-to.
So we thought, what better time than this to come to you live from our homes as we are getting through this quarantine of the COVID-19 pandemic. And there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of just information out there. And we thought, how could we bring together from a nutritional standpoint, from a clinical standpoint, as much information that we knew to our audience, to our listeners, to help them get through this not only healthier, but with their sanity still intact. So let's start out with just some basics about what we know about this virus. We know that it's obviously very new, that our immune systems haven't come up against something like this before, but we know that it definitely first attacks the lungs. So Diana, can you go into that a little bit?
So while we think some of us may be more immune than others, we might be just because we're all supporting our immune systems, but we all don't have antibodies against it yet. And hopefully we will once we get it. So it does really attack our lungs. And so the single mechanism of action that causes these respiratory viruses to be so deadly is that they cause lung inflammation that really can't be resolved. And so while it tends to be worse with people with comorbidities, it really can kind of affect everyone just because we've never been exposed.
So true. And I think, someone who's been diagnosed with hypertension or with COPD or who's been a smoker or who has diabetes, like those are some of these cofactors that we know of that are a problem, but there's so much we don't know about this virus. I mean, what if this has to do with some of your immune system, potentially your antioxidant levels? Like there's so much that we have yet to learn, because we know there's a lot of people with this virus and we know there's a spectrum of kind of what's being experienced. There's people who are dying. There's people in intense, in the ICU and in critical care. There's some people who are getting bad viruses, but are able to fight this off at home. And then there's some people like me that every day I'm like, I think I have it. And then 2 hours later, I feel great. So, what is psychosomatic? I think that's its own element of this, but what is just, there's all these underlying factors of why somebody is more susceptible to this. And again, we already know some of these main things, a lot of the chronic diseases, people with suppressed immune systems, those are of course going to put someone at risk, but it's an interesting idea, right? Like when the virus hits, your immune system responds right away. And, when you get like that achy feeling when you first get sick, that's this like cytokine storm. How would we describe cytokines? Like basically just like little anti-inflammatory molecules.
Yeah.
So they create inflammation as a way to try to fight off what's happening, to basically like call to attention the immune system. And so it also calls attention to you. You're like, oh, I don't feel well. Maybe I should lay low. Maybe I should take care of myself. The problem is the amount of like cytokines, or the amount of like the strength of this army that comes in when it recognizes this virus is very overwhelming compared to like a lot of other viruses that most of us have been up against. So I think that's also a little bit scary for our clients with suppressed immune systems or even with like autoimmune conditions. Does this run the threat of causing like an overstimulation of the immune system in that regard too, and kind of flaring up any immune system issues. But what we can say is that we know that the internal environment, it's interesting, like this idea of the quarantine, right? We're protecting ourselves from the outside environment right now, but how can we protect our internal environment and make sure that we are the type of host for this virus that is going to make it back off, that isn't going to infiltrate our system and completely wipe us out? Did you want to add anything to that, Diana?
Just that, some of us don't even know what's necessarily going on inside of us. And so while this, obviously we've seen that this is affecting more of the older population, and that's kind of what we thought and saw when it came over to the US. We're actually seeing that it is affecting all different age groups, and I think a lot of things are depleted and change as we age, and that's a big reason why more of like over certain age groups are more susceptible and more likely to be hospitalized. But a lot of us, whether we're 20, 30, 40, we don't always know that we could be having some sort of autoimmune response within our bodies, that we could have some sort of inflammatory process going on. And so I think it's really catching people by surprise, how sick certain people are getting from this virus.
Sure. Yes. Great point. The number of adults that are like 25 to 40 that are hospitalized just in New York City, it's terrifying. So we know this isn't just an age issue. We know this isn't just
even like a morbidity issue that we're like aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think also it's fair to just go a little step further and say, we know that a big part of this is like the shortness of breath, right? And what happens is like this fear of the lower lungs, especially kind of like filling up with fluid or puff, which is actually pus, which is like dead neutrophils, which is a type of white blood cell, and getting into a position or an environment where you're more susceptible to a bacteria that would create pneumonia. And then, God forbid, things get septic, or, even a stress of that magnitude on your lungs is going to prevent your body to get oxygen to essential organs like the heart and the kidneys in particular for this condition. So that's really the more dire end of this, and really why you want to make sure you're taking care of your body and giving yourself any fighting chance you can, because it is a little mysterious still about why certain people are able to fight this off and why others are really getting hit with it. Because at the end of the day, even if you're young and you are really healthy, you still don't want to be sick for 5 days. You don't want to be sick for 1 day. So
2 weeks.
Exactly. Like, so what can we do to prevent this? And I also just want to say, there will be more viruses like this to come. Whether it wipes out as many people, whether it's as contagious, I hope not. But we're always up against, viruses, bacteria, all sorts of things. And so can we use this time as an opportunity to strengthen our body and to strengthen our own immune system and our own knowledge to empower ourselves, so that we can become a healthier individual, a healthier family, a healthier community, a healthier city.
Yeah, and the irony is I think we're all getting a little bit healthier along the way.
I hope so.
Cleaned inside and outside, let alone I think everybody's really trying to support their immune system as best they can. And immune support's not usually top of mind. Even cold and flu season, people, take a little bit more vitamin C, but people now are really trying to figure out, okay, like what can I bring into my kitchen? What kind of supplements can I take? What can I do to just feel optimal, let alone the fact that we're all staying indoors a little bit more, surrounded by people that we hopefully love, and sleeping a lot more. So there are some like silver linings to this that are getting a little stronger.
So diet-wise, let's go into that aspect of it first. Things that we should be prioritizing, things that we should be limiting. At least where we are, I feel like a lot of people are in week 2 of like isolation or self-quarantine mode, and it's a little bit less of like we've already like turned to the corner of the crisis phase, and I think we're just trying to like settle into like this might be the new temporary normal for a little while. But I'm seeing a lot of mistakes even when I do sneak into the grocery store. Like, why are there fresh fruits and vegetables but there's no like canned goods? I think that's actually something we need to address first. Is we need to be consuming nutrient dense foods more than ever right now. And gosh, if you have the ability to either get delivery or some sort of groceries that are fresh produce, please take advantage of those.
Yeah, we're very much used to, when are we going to eat again, and when are we going to get to the grocery store again? And it's so important to still have those non-perishable in your cabinet and definitely pull them out when it's necessary. But at least so far in the epicenter here in New York City, the grocery stores are still pretty well stocked. I think
there's still produce.
Yeah, there's still good produce and good quality meats as well. And I think people kind of panicked initially, and the grocery store shelves were emptying of things like toilet paper and paper towels and even some of the really good foods. But now I think things are kind of like slowing down, and the good produce is there.
And we know there's some great food delivery services, whether it's different delivery systems that just give you high quality grass-fed meat and animal protein, to things like what are the like different vegetable companies that send you, like Misfit Markets,
Imperfect Foods,
yeah, that are basically sending you, fresh produce. And there's a lot of ways to get creative right now so that you can minimize your food waste. I really think that's a big point that we should be focused on, is like, okay, we have all of this food. How can we maximize this, not throw out any scraps, maybe make some vegetable broth with it instead. If you're going to like roast a chicken, can you save the bones and make bone broth with it later and make a soup with it? I think we really have to use this as a time to focus on that food waste. But yeah, I mean, I think in crisis mode, you think about, I need frozen foods and I need canned foods and I need foods that are going to be for months. Like, I know this is going to be a while, but I hope we are not here for like 6 months. Like, that is not okay. So I agree. I think keep that food in the back of the cabinet, in the back of the freezer, but day to day, let's still be eating those fresh fruits and vegetables so that we can keep ourselves as healthy as we can.
Yep. Get all those vital nutrients to support our immune systems right now.
Now, with this stress, we also think about cortisol. And cortisol can do some wacky things to our cravings and our blood sugar. How would you recommend someone to eat right now, knowing that they are at home and there might be some chips, there might be some soda, there might be some wine? I guess I'm worried about, people getting a little sloppy in their habits and maybe not planning out their day the same way as they used to.
Right. And, I always think we were talking about this, that we were like, let's come out of this our best selves. Like, let's not be drinking alcohol every single night, eating chips for lunch. Like, let's come out of this and people are like, where have you been? Right?
I was joking and saying it's like, there's this idea of like, when you're in high school or when you're in college and you come back after the summer and it's like, well, like, wow, they look great. Or like, wow, what happened to them? It's like, you want to be that person that's like, I embraced my health and I did as best as I could and I made it,
Yeah. I slept 8 to 9 hours. Planned out my meals and ate a lot of good fruits and vegetables. So, I mean, back to your question in terms of actually like planning out meals, I think it's really important that you kind of figure out like your routine and your schedule and figure out how meals fit into that. And so while it's really easy to be like, I don't even know what time it is, like I'm just going to have whatever's in my fridge right now for lunch, breakfast, dinner, whatever, I think it's really important to think ahead. And, I know, for example, you were saying you meal prep ahead of time, knowing you have so many clients that you have to be able to kind of grab food and go. Someone else might have a little bit more time and be able to actually kind of make lunch or make dinner and really sit and enjoy kind of the cooking process. But it's really figuring out, I think, whatever works for you, but making sure that you're still not going too long without eating so that your cortisol and your blood sugar is spiking. But you're also being cognizant of not only when, but what you're eating as well, and still having those healthy fats and those good vegetable protein combinations.
Yeah. And I think, like, don't kid yourself. What you bring in your house, you're going to eat. So if you're bringing sugar into your house, if you're bringing wine into your house, if you're bringing chips into your house, like, you better have a good system set up to control that, because you're going to consume it. So it's like, do you want to consume it over the next 4 weeks, or do you want to consume it in the next 4 hours? When you're in like a scarcity mode, when you're in a fear-based mode, when you're watching the news all day, it is very difficult to think about the best and highest version of yourself. And so for me, I knew if I made a bunch of meals and pre-portioned them out, not even like batch prep, like I put them into containers, that was one less barrier for me to even think about like opening up the cabinet to see what treats are in there that could be fast and, easy to grab. I knew that I just was going to heat up my little pre-portioned, precious little, protein, vegetable, healthy fat, and that it was going to keep me functioning. But maybe, maybe the people at home don't necessarily need to be as structured and regimented as that. But I do think, be aware that your mind is dealing with a lot of stuff right now, and sugar and chips and these like fatty foods and salty foods, these are a quick escape, but you will pay for them later.
Yeah, and not only will they make you not feel your best while you're eating them, right after you eat them, and when you come out of this quarantine, but also you want to be supporting your immune system right now. So drinking wine all night, all day, having chips all day. I mean, it's just, you could take all the supplements you want. It's still your immune system's going to be suppressed from all of that junk that you're eating.
I was just on another video call earlier this afternoon, and we were talking about the research that showed how the intake of sugar suppresses your white blood cell activity, so basically your immune system, but it suppresses your white blood cell activity for like approximately 4 hours. For children, it was around 2 hours, but for some adults, it was up to 8 hours. And it was like the equivalent of having like one soda, which I don't drink soda, but I mean, it's not difficult to get that many grams of sugar combined between different things, especially if you think about, like, we always talk about orange juice. Yeah. And like, if you've seen or if you listen to our other podcasts, like we've talked about like the vitamin C myth of like how this came to be, that we thought oranges and orange juice was the best, richest, fuel source for getting vitamin C. But that is so much sugar in it. If people are thinking that they should be loading up on vitamin C by, chugging orange juice, they're really just suppressing their immune system because they're getting tons of added sugar, just like hitting their body all at once.
Right.
What do you think about the whole idea of supplements, and kind of where someone should start if they don't take anything right now, but they're just looking to kind of support their immune system day to day right now?
Yeah, I know supplement cabinets are being wiped clean right now. I think people are trying to get their hands on everything. So I think it's really important that people kind of have an idea of what to be taking. So I think if you've really never taken anything before, the first thing I would always start with is vitamin C, which seems really obvious, but they're actually doing tons of trials in China, but they also are treating people, even in the US now, with high doses of IV vitamin C. So, I mean, if they're using that in hospitals, that like that's not only gonna be a way to help your immune system if you're fighting it, but also a way to prevent it.
I love that. Also in New York, but I know a lot of the country is vitamin D as in dog, deficient. We know the anti-inflammatory benefits, the immune-enhancing benefits of vitamin D. So I would add that to the list. Vitamin C is an easy one that you can kind of load up on and, easily take 500 or 1,000 milligrams a day. Vitamin D is something that you usually want to have a sense of like where your levels are to kind of gauge how much you should be taking. But I would say safely everyone could be taking 2,000 IUs of D3 without too much of a problem. But again, it is best if you can get tested, because if your levels are lab low and you weigh more than 125 pounds, you should probably be taking like 5,000 units a day. But again, it depends on your weight. It depends on your current level. I also really like the idea, if you first feel like you're coming down with something, to start dosing with a little bit of zinc. I would say anything between like 10 to 30 milligrams, just to be able to. The interesting thing with zinc, it starts to like kind of like fight and like poke holes in the virus to make your body able to fight it out faster. So those first 3 days specifically, if you're able to load up on a little bit more zinc, that can be helpful.
Right. And that goes into the point of taking everything proactively. So not only taking it once you feel sick, but also knowing that we are all likely going to be exposed. So taking it as much as you can in advance so that your body can fight it.
I'm glad you said that. And I want to just veer off for a moment, because we were talking about with this virus, you develop a fever, and that the fever is good. Your body's trying to fight this off. Now, obviously you want to keep that fever in a comfortable range. So I'm personally comfortable keeping a fever of like 100, 101. Someone else might not be comfortable with it that high, but I know the fever is going to be burning off that virus. I'll be sipping on warm waters. I'll be making sure that I'm staying hydrated, but it is a very dehydrating process. So I worry that people don't drink enough water already. And then God forbid they do get hit with this, they're already starting off at a place of dehydration. So I think one, make sure your water intake is at a good place right now, but it also kind of goes hand in hand with this idea of, can we build up our nutrition and our immune system right now so that we're not starting from a place of like lack?
Right. What other supplements do you recommend?
So,
We can go ahead on.
I get a little crazy with the supplements. I'm like, here we go. So glutathione, I think the research and the readings that you and I have been doing, we see that keep coming up over and over and over. And it's interesting, like N-acetylcysteine we've seen as a great antioxidant and a great supportive agent for lung health. And I've used that with my clients with like asthma and lung issues for years. And I've seen that in a lot of research based around COVID. But that's actually one of the precursors for glutathione. Same thing with vitamin C. It's one of these precursors that we need for glutathione. I know there's a lot of conversation around supplementing with glutathione and what's the best source. I tend to use liposomal glutathione. I don't even mind saying I love the glutathione force from Bulletproof. I'm a huge fan of it. But I will tell you, like I sent my family a bottle of glutathione and a bottle of NAC about 3 weeks ago when I heard that this was coming. And I told them, go get zinc, go get vitamin C, and go get elderberry. If anyone can find elderberry, please let me know, because I see a real shortage happening, which means people are using it. But that's been another great one.
There's also controversy with elderberry.
I didn't hear about it.
Well, it's just that they're saying that, this whole cytokine storm that this is causing.
Yeah.
Elderberry, and Echinacea is a little more debatable, but elderberry kind of increases that cytokine storm. So they're now saying you can take elderberry, and these are also really high doses, more so than what you're typically taking in your 2 tablespoons.
Yeah.
Spoons that you get in your Gaia herbs bottle.
Yeah.
But they're saying now that if you, and this is all based on scientific, obviously people haven't been studied.
Yeah.
But speculation with understanding the mechanisms behind the virus, that elderberry really spikes the cytokine production. So if you are actively experiencing corona, then it's
pull back.
Yeah. Whereas
I think,
thione, you'd want to make sure you're getting at a really high dose because your body's
using it up. Yeah. I also think it's good to note that if you're taking Tylenol to control your temperature at all, Tylenol depletes your glutathione. It'd be another reason why you'd want to be taking glutathione during that time too. Because you mentioned Echinacea, can you touch on that?
Yeah, Echinacea also a great antiviral. The only thing would be if you do have any autoimmune conditions, you wouldn't want to be taking this because of the way that it impacts the immune system. So just knowing that it's not right for everyone, but it is usually in like a lot of the different like wellness formulas you might find, and it's something that's generally recognized as safe for people to take in order to ward off viruses or diseases of any sort.
I was just sending, I didn't tell you this yet, I was just sending a client a Metagenics product called Echinacea Synergy, and it has a little bit of vitamin C, echinacea, perilla, licorice, ginger. That might be it. Yeah. But it was like all of this great blend of like antivirals of like, we keep seeing all of these nutrients be mentioned in documents. I was like, oh my gosh, this has everything we need. Like, let's just send this person. But it is someone who doesn't have an autoimmune condition. So, or at least an active one that we've been aware of.
Yeah, but all of those are really important, especially for this virus.
Ginger has been something I've really embraced because of its antiviral benefits. It's like selling out of the grocery stores now. I think everyone's catching on, but I've just been shaving off a little piece of fresh ginger and putting it into warm water every night. I've actually really enjoyed it. It's become like a nice routine to end the day. It's very warming. It creates a lot of movement in the body. And it is something that you could do right now as a preventative, but also if you started to not feel well.
That's great.
What other ones?
Another one would be, I've actually been reading a lot about melatonin.
Like high doses of it?
Yes. And
I was reading something about that too.
Yeah, how it's been really helpful and how they're saying that as you age, you lose more and more melatonin. So that could be one of the many reasons why sleep issues can become an issue. But with that said, making sure we're sleeping and that our bodies are producing enough melatonin, right? So we're not staring at blue light at night because our bodies need to be producing enough. But also, I've been kind of pouring a little bit of tart cherry juice into my water, and making little concoctions with like mushrooms and different, because mushrooms are
I
great.
love that.
I have
Yeah.
these droppers that I put in like a bunch of reishi and different kinds of mushrooms, and then put in a little tart cherry juice so I don't taste the mushrooms, but also to get that melatonin.
With the tart cherry.
Leaking melatonin because I don't have any issues sleeping, but that's something that I would definitely explore if
I've seen some studies with like really high doses I would never tell people to take, but I understand this is a unique situation. So I'm not necessarily recommending my clients take those high doses yet, but by all means, especially if they feel like they're having trouble falling asleep, whether their mind is active, they've been on the news too much, they've been, looking at too many screens, easily 3 milligrams. We've always told patients that they could take 3 milligrams, no problem. But I am curious to follow this research more with some of these really high doses. Like I've seen like 50 milligrams dosage and stuff like that. I'm very curious to see how this kind of pans out and what they find from it. Cod liver oil is something else that I always do, but I kind of forget about because that's also a great source of vitamin A, which is a good antioxidant, also great for the lungs, and also usually has some like naturally occurring vitamin D.
It's a great one. Also, green tea polyphenols is another one.
Which is easy. Just have some green tea.
Green tea every morning, especially, I don't know, because I'm not like waking up as early and running to an office, I'm not relying on coffee as much. So I switched over to green tea, which I actually think is a good habit to be doing right now if you're
totally pull back a little bit.
Yeah. So it's
I think that's great. And then, there's so many other blends like astragalus, andrographis, berberine. These are all different, quercetin, different like antimicrobial, antiviral herbs. Quercetin's are great, like antihistamine. I'm sure the list goes on and on. And the cool thing too is like, if you're just taking a couple of these, or like, again, if you don't know where to start and you just want to start with the basics and you're like, I'm just going to take a probiotic, a vitamin C, and, maybe a vitamin D or cod liver oil, like that would still be something. So something's better than nothing.
Absolutely.
Now, I want to transition a little bit to what we can do to be supporting our bodies now that we're inside, physical, mental, spiritual, because I think there's a lot from a health perspective we can be doing and being careful of, but also just supporting our mental well-being as we are stuck inside. So why don't we wrap up any of the kind of nutritional or supplement recommendations we have right now, and then we'll switch over to part 2, which will be more of the tips and tricks for while we're home and how to keep like the body, mind, and spirit in a good place.
Yeah, that's equally as important. One other thing that I wanted to throw in though is that, we're all cooking a little bit more, hopefully, or right. I think it's almost forced now. But I would say just making sure that you're using lots of good spices. So whether that's rosemary, turmeric, you're making kinds of like curries, stews, using garlic and onions. All of these foods are really, really important, as well as different types of vegetables. So you want to be kind of really eating the rainbow at this point, but also making sure you're getting in lots of good fruits and vegetables. So, those darker colored berries, those leafy greens, cruciferous vegetables, meaning broccoli, cauliflower, arugula, Brussels sprouts, things like that you can see at the grocery store and think, I'm going to try to incorporate those into my meal.
The cool thing too about these foods, right? There's not just one reason that make blueberries great. There's not one reason that makes broccoli great. There's a million. And we could go on and on. That's the amazing part of these nutrient dense foods. It's like the ripple effect of eating these foods is incredible. Like you don't even understand the full capacity of them, but just like the cruciferous vegetables alone, they produce something called sulforaphane that's going to be an antioxidant that's going to help your liver and detoxification pathways. Like give your body every shot it has to feel amazing right now, while you have the time to do it. Cool. All right. Well, thank you for joining us for part 1. We will be back with part 2 shortly. And please share with us if you feel like we missed anything, if there's any questions you have, we want to hear from you. So we're all in this together, so feel free to send us your questions.
Yeah, you can reach out to us at funkyouup@physiologicnyc.com.
See you soon.
Bye.
You've been listening to Funk You Up. Be sure to like, review, and subscribe for more daily tips on living well.